start of segment 1, Introduction to the BDM course. So welcome to this course which is called Business Data Management. The course is about how businesses manage their operations using data. All right, that is basically what it is. So the reason why this course is very relevant for our program, which is the online BS degree in programming and data science, is that significantly large number of data sets that we will get to see in our lives later on when we go into our jobs and so on, and the analysis that we will do with these data sets will all come from the space of business. Okay. So what do we mean by saying that it comes from the space of business? It means that it will come from either within the companies, so it will be data that is operational data of the companies, their sales operations or their production operations or something like that, or it will come from the markets in which the companies operate, right? So, for example, a company is basically competing with some other companies in the marketplace. So you want to understand how much share of the market does this company have compared to its competitors. So that would be market share information. So it's basically information is coming from outside. So similarly, you might also get information about the environment. What is the availability of certain kinds of components? What is the cost of labor? Is labor easily available? Where is it available? This is all environmental information that is coming from outside the company. So the data sets can be either from within the company or from outside the company, and typically companies tend to keep such data sets in the sense that they will have internal IT systems, or they will have external ways by which they will collect the data through external agencies, and these data sets that they keep analyzing it internally to generate charts of various kinds which give them insights about how to run their businesses. Okay, so that is roughly what we are going to introduce to you in this course. It's the first course, so there are many concepts that will get introduced. So don't be alarmed by the number of concepts that come your way, but just kind of stay with the flow. You will find basically that almost everything that we are doing is with respect to data sets and analyzing those data sets using some very simple tools. All right, so you will be able to pick it up and move on. So let me just give you a very simple a few examples of data sets and their analysis. Okay, so here in this example that I am giving you, there is a company which is a drug company, right? A pharma company that makes drugs, and the company has been selling these drugs in the market, but they are finding that the drug is not effective in the sense that it is supposed to cure something, but it's not curing it as well as what the company found during its clinical trials. So they want to understand why is it that their drug is not performing as well as they thought it would. And so what they did basically is that they went out and collected information, data, both from within their company, because when the company, their sales representatives will be meeting doctors, so during those times they collected the information, or they went and got the information from hospitals, which are external sources. So they got 430 such data items of ineffectiveness of their drug, right? Evidence of ineffectiveness of their drug, and then they looked at the reasons for this drug being ineffective, and what is shown here basically is the different reasons mentioned for the ineffectiveness of the drug, the different things identified, and how often it occurred, right? That particular incident. So for example, the drug was not effective because they missed a dose, right? So you're supposed to sometimes take, if you see, the doctor would have written 1-1-1, which means you take once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the night. Sometimes people miss to take it in the afternoon. They take only in the morning and night. That's called dose missed. So most of the cases, out of 430 incidents, you can see here 92 of those incidents, right? 92 of those incidents are related to dose being missed. Okay, the next highest is 83. So what we have done basically is we have taken all the different reasons and we have sorted those reasons in descending order of frequency. So the dose missed is 92 times. Wrong time, right? Wrong time means basically instead of giving it after meals, you gave it before meals, for example. So that is wrong time. That was 83 times. Wrong drug means people mistook many times, the drug names are very similar. So you will see the name and then you will think that this is the drug, but actually you would have misspelled it. One letter would be changed or something and it will become a totally different drug. So like that, a wrong drug was administered, or we said 2.5 milligram of the drug, maybe 5 milligram was given. So different dose of the drug was given. Like that, there were many reasons. Okay, so I'm not discussing all the reasons, but there are many reasons. But what is interesting to note here is that if you take the first 4 items, that is dose missed, wrong time, wrong drug and overdose, these 4 reasons, they account for as much as so a 92 plus 83 plus 76 plus 59, you add that and divide it by 430, you get basically total which is quite high. Okay, it is almost 80%. There is a rule which says, this is called Pareto rule, which says that somewhere around 80% you will get. Most of the interesting cases will be cumulative count will be close to 80%. So the first 4 cases almost is coming to nearly 80%, right? Maybe in this case about 70%, 65, 66% or something, but nearly 80%. So you got, and then when you get to the 5th case, wrong patient, that means the drug was delivered to the wrong patient, you crossed 80%. So you could say basically that out of all these reasons that were mentioned, there are many reasons. The first 4 reasons are vital, 4 important things to focus on, and the remaining, right? The 5th one maybe is something that you can consider, but the remaining are all not so important cases. Okay, so what this chart is telling you is that how to divide all the causes into things that are more important to address and those that are less important to address. Okay, so this is called a Pareto chart, and clearly to collect such a chart you have to collect data from within and outside of all the incidents of where you notice that the drug is not being effective. All right, so let me move on to the second example. So you can see in this chart, this is a pie chart. You will see many such acronyms. Okay, PV means passenger vehicle, means car basically, and OEM means original equipment manufacturer. Basically it means those people who sell the vehicles under their own brand name. Like Maruti, for example, you will see Maruti Suzuki brand name, you will see cars, right? You will see Hyundai cars, you will see Tata Motors cars, Tata cars, you will see Mahindra cars and so on, Kia cars. So those people who sell the cars under their own brand are called OEMs. Or original equipment manufacturers. So this one takes in the quarter April to September 2022, it is saying of the total vehicles sold, how many were sold by Maruti Suzuki. So you see that Maruti Suzuki sold 41% of the total number of vehicles sold, and Hyundai was 14.7, almost 15%, Tata was 14.2, like that, Mahindra 8.7, Kia 6.8. So this diagram very nicely illustrates the market share. Okay, the share of market, that means how much of the market is occupied by Maruti Suzuki, how much by Hyundai, how much by Tata Motors and so on. Now why is this useful? It is useful because for example, if you are Tata Motors, you can say, look, I am 14.2%, my next biggest competitor is Hyundai, is only 14.7%. So if I can somehow get another 0.5% market share, right, which is not much, 0.5% market share, I will become the number 2 player in India after Maruti, right? You can say things like this and you can prepare a strategy to become the number 2 player by using charts like this. So to prepare something like this, you need information about all the cars that have been sold, right? So where do you get this kind of information? One is that you go to all the dealers who are selling cars and you collect data from all of them, right? And that's how you find out about all the cars. The other is that you can go to Ministry of Road Transport, which has a public register, so it's public information, how many cars they have registered in the quarter, right? So you can check, because every car that is sold, new car that is sold, will have to get a registration plate, license plate. So it will definitely go to the road transport department and get registered there. So you can go and get that information from there. Whichever way, you can get all this kind of interesting information from various places, and then you can put all this information together, may form a picture of market share like this. Then this is useful, you have seen, basically to figure out where you stand with respect to your competition. Now the third chart I am showing you is what is called a line chart. The first one I showed you is the Pareto chart, which is a bar chart along with some cumulative basically diagram line that we drew there, right? So we saw that there is a bar chart, but in that bar chart we also drew a cumulative line, right, like this. So that basically line told you whether you crossed 80% or not, right? And the second one was a pie chart. This one is a line chart. Okay, so you're seeing basically lines being drawn. So here we are talking about a shop which sells electric durables, right? So they are selling basically many things, but of the things they are selling, 3 things are of high relevance to this shop. One is washing machines, which sells a lot. refrigerators and microwaves. So you can see that over years they have plotted it over time, right? So they have looked at the sales of microwaves, refrigerators and washing machines over time. So you see that washing machines used to be 1520 washing machines were being sold at one time, but now in 2020 the number has gone to more than 2000 washing machines. But refrigerator, it went down a little bit and then it went up again. Microwave went up a little bit and came down and so on. So it looks like in 2018 people prefer to buy microwave instead of buying refrigerator or something, right? We don't know. We have to understand, analyze. But anyway, these are the trend charts. Now, why is such a chart useful? It is useful because the shop has to decide what are the equipments it will keep on display, right? Because shop is a small limited space it has. If it has to use that space in the most effective way, means it has to keep the it has to keep the things that are moving fast, which means the ones that are selling more, those items it should stock in the store and display it. So in this case, it can say that washing machines are an increasing trend, so keep more space somewhere near the entrance for washing machines, and then refrigerators may be the next space that you give, and microwaves you can put in the back and give it lesser space, something like that. And to do such analysis, the shop has to look at all the bills of all the sales it has made over several years. So 5, 6, 7, 8 years it has to look at all the bills and then take the bills, analyze the bills and then prepare a chart like this, right? So what are we seeing? We are seeing basically that in all these cases we are seeing basically that we are able to use data to create insights, right? Very good insights were useful for the business. Okay, here is the last one I am going to show you. Here this is a startup company, software startup company. This company is trying to decide which software product area to enter. There are many areas it can get into. For example, it can do networking, it can do a security product, it can do a logistics product, it can do an ERP product. It is trying to decide whether to do this or that, which one to do, where to invest. Only one thing it can invest in. What should it invest in? So there are two parameters that it is using to decide. One is revenue growth. Unless that particular area is growing at least 5%, right? That is the benchmark it has set. It is, unless it's growing by 5%, it doesn't make sense to enter. That is one criteria. The second criterion says that it should be profitable. I don't want to lose money while doing this business, right? So it should be at least 15% in terms of profit. So that is what this line is saying. So I have drawn two lines here. One is 15% profit line, another is 5% revenue growth line. And then I plot all the different software product things that are being sold in dots. It's a dot, right? One dot for one product. And so what you get is called a scatter diagram. Okay, this is a 2 by 2 scatter diagram because we have drawn two lines like this in the middle, and so we divide the whole space into 4 quadrants, right? Very useful in management. In management, they teach you how to use these 2 by 2s to make some very important decisions. So in this case, if you are in this quadrant, it basically means that not only are you getting low profitability, but you are not getting any growth. There is only one product that is like that, which is healthcare. In this space, there is good profitability, but there is hardly any growth, like gaming, storage and all are like that. In this space, you are getting growth, but hardly any profit. So networking, security, mobile, BI and all are like that. And whereas in this space, you are getting both growth as well as profitability. So logistics and all is in that space. So the company can say basically that it's better, more worthwhile for me to spend my effort in building a product for supply chain management. SCM stands for supply chain management, or in the area of logistics. Logistics and supply chain management are linked. So in that area, I should be able to product. They can think like this. So I illustrated 4 kinds of diagrams, right? This is a scatter diagram, dot plot in a 2 by 2 scatter diagram. Then we talked about line chart, we talked about pie chart, we talked about bar chart along with a line to show the cumulative values. These are 4 types of charts. We can ask where did the data come from for each of these. We saw the first chart, Pareto chart, the data came both from internal and external sources. The market share data is entirely external data. Trend chart of sales is entirely internal data. The shop is looking at its bills and making decision. The scatter diagram is all entirely external data, right? It is collecting data of all the products that have been sold, what are their margins and what are their growth rates. So in order to make sure that you get a good understanding or feel for both these kinds of data sources, which means external data sources as well as company internal data sources, we are going to divide the course into 2 parts. The first part, which will be discussed in the first 4 weeks, we will look at external data sources, and in the next part, which is in the next 8 weeks, we will be looking at internal data sources. Now obviously for internal data sources, you have to understand the company itself, because this data is coming from within the company. So we are going to do the last 8 weeks in the form of case studies. I'll explain what those case studies are. There are going to be 4 case studies in the course, and each case study will expose you to a data set, a few data sets that come from within that company that we are studying, right, the case study. So that is how we are going to do it. Now in the entire course, whether we are doing external data or internal data, the only tool we will use is what is called a spreadsheet. Okay, you may have heard of spreadsheet. If you have not heard of spreadsheet, basically Microsoft Excel, you'll remember, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all these Microsoft tools. Excel is a spreadsheet. Okay, so the equivalent in Google is Google Sheets. What I opened here is Google Sheets. I've shown you a picture here, which is Google Sheets. Okay, so you can do Excel, you can do Google Sheets, and there are other tools by other providers also which are similar tools which are all spreadsheets. They're all called spreadsheets, right? Broadly they're called spreadsheets. Now a spreadsheet will basically have rows and it will have columns. In this case the rows are employees, the columns are certain parameters that you have extracted from their resume. We will have a full case study on this later, but I'm just giving you an idea of how data is organized. So you have taken from a resume various details. What is the name, how many years of experience, what is the appraisal score of this person, what are the skills that the person has, what key projects the person has worked on, what is the duration in the current role, and when the candidate is likely to be available, something like that. Okay, so this is a spreadsheet, and we will use various charts. We have already seen bar chart, line chart, and all the charts that we will create, we'll also create using the spreadsheet itself. For example, Excel or Google Sheets allows you to insert a chart. Here what I've done is I pressed insert in this, and then I've said chart, and I took the first 2 columns. I selected the first 2 columns of this, which is employee name and years of experience, and see, it has made a bar chart for me with employee name and years of experience. It made a bar chart. So like that you can make charts yourself by taking the data sheet which is in Excel or a Google Sheets, and then selecting columns from it and asking the tool, which is in this case the spreadsheet tool, to print, represent, to draw a chart for you, which could be a line chart or a bar chart or a pie chart or a scatter diagram or any of the charts that we have already seen, right? So that is basically what we are going to do. So we will spend quite some amount of time teaching you Excel itself, because some of you may know Excel very well, some of you may not know Excel very well. For those of you who know Excel, you might still find this as a useful revision. For those of you who don't know, you can learn something about it. Okay, so we are going to actually introduce you to Excel, how it works, some of the key functions that we will use, and various things that we will be using Excel for to do the analysis. Okay, now in order to understand the external data sources, right, I said that we are going to do first 4 weeks we are going to do external data sources, and the next 8 weeks will be internal data sources through case studies. So to understand the external data sources, you need to understand the context in which the business operates, right? Any business operates in a context. This context is usually the language for that context and the idioms for the context, and the entire way in which the external context is structured and all is basically comes from the world of economics, right? The field of economics. So economics basically tries to understand how companies basically create things, how do they create value, how do they produce things, and how do we sell these things through a marketplace to households, and how do households basically get employed by these companies, how do the households give capital for the companies to operate, these kind of flows, right, between firms on one side and households on the other side. All the flows that go on is what economics studies. Okay, and this flow is kind of background, this structure, the way of understanding firms and households, and the information that comes from households and the information that comes from firms and so on, external data I'm saying, is very, very important for us to understand first before we get into data analysis, which is why there will be a very small introduction that I will be providing to you on economic concepts, very, very, very basic. Okay, and it will just be 2 presentations that I will be giving you. With that you will get some understanding of economics. The economics is usually taught as a full course, but here we are just giving you a gist of it, just enough for you to understand what all the things that we'll be talking about later. So how is the course structured? The first 4 weeks is about external data, as I said. Here what we will be doing basically is we will be taking household consumption data taken from some surveys. So there are 2 kinds of household data that we will be looking at. one is consumption data. What did they buy in the last month? That kind of data. And the second data is what is called household aspirational data. What would they like to buy? Because if you want to make a forecast of the potential market for some product or service, you need to know what people are likely to buy, more want to buy, rather than what they already bought. Okay. And how do you go about carrying out your own custom survey? So we are going to introduce you to this chat GPT, which is in the news quite a lot, how to use that to generate a survey for if you want to do later on. BDM, business data management, is one of the courses in this program which has a project, right, component, capstone project component. So when you get into the capstone project, you might want to generate a custom survey, as we are telling you how to do, and go and administer this survey with your customer. Analyzing consumption data using Excel, and then we will tell you in this part of the course, we will tell you how to determine how many people are likely to buy two-wheelers. How do you estimate that? By looking at the data sets. In fact, actually we will go beyond that and say, how do we find out how many people are likely to take loans to buy two-wheelers? How do you find out, right? How do you estimate that? And we are also going to basically study the loan market a little bit so that you get an understanding of how to use data sets to understand external data to understand certain things like the market for loans in this case. The first case study we will do is based on an e-commerce company, right? A Flipkart like company, let us say. So this company, when we look at the data sets from that company, you will find basically you will understand how e-commerce works. You will understand how to analyze the sales of the e-commerce company in terms of the number of things sold, different categories of things, which is selling, which is not selling, and so on. And from that you can determine using Pareto, as I have already discussed. Pareto, we will be able to use Pareto to figure out which products to focus on. And then we will be figuring out how to distribute these products to customers. And specifically, in order to distribute it, you got to store those products in the warehouses. So how do you organize the warehouse so that you can respond to customer needs in a much better way? We will be using 2x2 scatter diagrams for that. Okay. So this is what we will do in the first case study. In the second case study, which is a manufacturing case study, we are looking at a company that makes automotive gears. Okay. So every car basically has a number of components. One of the components basically is the gear set, right? So the axle, inside the axle also there will be gears, and there will be, for changing, you will change the gears, right? To change the speed of the car and all that, you will be changing the gear, right? Such gears are being made by this automotive company. So through this case study, we will understand how manufacturing industry works. We will understand how to make projection of the production volumes that you have to plan for based on the sales and market data. Then we will tell you how to plan the production and how to improve the efficiency of operations by reducing wastage, improving utilization, improving the plant capacity, and so on. And when do you buy materials? Because every manufacturing plant needs to buy materials. If you don't have materials, you cannot produce. And if you buy materials, if your stock of materials runs out too quickly, that also is a problem. So if you buy too early, also it's a problem because you have locked up a lot of capital. So buying materials at the right time is very important. And how do you manage profitability and so on. So this is what we will discuss in the manufacturing case study. The third case study is on recruitment. Okay. So in the recruitment case study, which we are taking an IT company for this, because IT companies recruit a lot of people. So we are looking at how the IT company manages resumes. So a resume is an example of what is called an unstructured data set. It's very difficult to put the resume into specific fields. What is it in terms of numerical fields, right? So you can say that I bought if monthly bill, if I'm looking at monthly purchases, if I'm looking at, I bought 10 kilos of rice, 5 kilos of atta, 2 kilos of sugar, something like that. But so it's all very numerical and all that. But in the case of resume, you don't know what it is. It will say some skills will be there, some experience, projects that I worked on will be there, something like that. So this is an example of an unstructured data set, right? So we will teach you how to look at unstructured data sets, take those data sets and turn them into tables with some meaningful fields. And we will also tell you how recruitment works in some sense, because they have to use different channels for recruitment. They will either use an external agency for recruitment, or they will interview the candidates themselves, whatever it is. These are all the various ways. And how do they find the candidate, right? There are ways. So you can use Monster, or Can you use a job portal or something like that to find the candidate? Can you use LinkedIn? So these are all channels. And job description has some data in it, resume has some data in it, company has to do some match between the resume and the job description. So that is a problem for the human resources or recruitment organization inside the IT company. And then after you have shortlisted the candidates, you want to basically shortlist the candidates in some more effective way, and also you want to use basically some analysis to figure out for what kinds of job profiles, what channels are better, right? So for this profile it's better to use this channel, for that profile it's better to use that channel. So that is the recruitment case study. The final case study that we will be discussing is the financial services case study. It comes from a payment company, right? A company which basically like PayPal or Paytm or something like that. These are all payment companies. So we will understand how the payment industry works, and in this case we are talking about what is called new product introduction. This payment company is trying to introduce a new product. This product is called buy now pay later. Nowadays you can see this by BNPL or buy now pay later offers from many people. So this company is considering introducing like this a new product, and in order to introduce this product it has to look at existing payment data to figure out which customers to target the BNPL product, okay? And then they have to decide how do you nudge the customer to adopt, right, your product. So they have some basically so there is a way of testing whether a certain method, whatever intervention you are introducing to nudge or whatever, whether that is working or not, and that method is called A/B testing. So we will introduce to you this method called A/B testing, and we will tell you how to analyze whether this A/B testing is working or not. So you can see that there are many very interesting business-like concepts that are being introduced in the course. Firstly, through theory, which is the first 4 weeks, is more about some concepts in economics, learning Excel, looking at consumption data sources, analyzing it, that kind of thing in the first 4 weeks. And the next 8 weeks will be 4 case studies. Go deep down into 4 different types of companies and look at the data there and do some analysis. And hopefully, we are not going to exhaustively cover everything, but hopefully you will learn enough tricks here to be able to learn other things on your own and apply it when you get into a job. Okay, thank you. So that's the end of segment 1.